Triggers. Putting your finger on the trigger of a gun indicates that a bullet is about to be fired. For the addicted person, triggers are signals that you're entering a stage that brings you closer to a relapse. Now, triggers differ for everyone. In truth, there are a gazillion reasons to act out your addiction, whether or not that addiction is to alcohol or other drugs, gambling, sex or relationships, eating disorders. Whether your acting out is in response to anguish or joy, from getting fired to getting promoted, from being a loner to being the life of the party, to feeling sorry for yourself because you're single, to being overwhelmed with the responsibility of family, you can always find a reason to act out. The purpose of talking about the triggering effect is for you to think seriously about triggers and to identify for yourself your warning signs that you're entering a zone of jeopardy. It's possible that you are listening to this because you're part of a treatment or counseling program, which would mean at this time the likelihood of triggers occurring would be less. But when you leave this protected environment, the triggers quickly appear. The first trigger that I want to introduce is romanticizing the behaviors, euphoric recall. It's glamorizing the using behaviors and in the moment totally forgetting about the negative consequences. It involves a tunnel focus only on the positive feelings that you associate with the behavior.
When I first got into recovery, I spent a lot of time thinking about partying. If I even saw my friends, I could just envision the feeling I'd get from the rush of taking that first drink. But what I wasn't remembering is that I'd leave my daughter with a sitter that I didn't know, sometimes for days at a time, before I'd even remember to pick her up. And what I didn't want to remember is that my ex wanted to take her away from me because of the things I was doing.
Another major trigger is what you do with feelings. Addicted people have used their behaviors and substances for years to separate from their emotions. And there is so much to feel about. Guilt for how your behaviors have hurt others, sadness for your losses, anger, often with yourself, fear of what may be in front of you, shame, thinking of yourself as inadequate or not worthy. You can react to absolutely every feeling imaginable. Now, coupled with the trigger of feelings is the fact that those feelings are often associated with another trigger, and that is loss. By the time that you get to recovery, you've had multiple losses in your life. And oftentimes those losses are related to childhood, many times due to being raised with abuse, addiction, mental illness, the death of a parent or sibling.
When I was 15 years old, I was in a car accident. It was my fault. It was too much alcohol, speed, not enough experience. I killed my best friend. And after that, I went over the top. Here I am years later, clean and sober though. And that accident was so long ago, it didn't even dawn on me that I might need to talk about it. 18 months into my recovery, I was really struggling with thinking that I didn't deserve this life. You know? And I had put off getting a sponsor. I knew I wasn't doing well. So I found somebody who insisted on doing the steps. And you know, I was doing my fourth step work. My sponsor asked me if I had any secrets. You know, is there anything I hadn't told him about my life that was important or relevant to drinking? I just blurted it out. Started to cry like a little kid. I was so full of pain, full of guilt. I know it saved my life, and I know that it was the pain and the guilt that was chipping away at my sobriety. You know, I don't think I'm real comfortable with feelings, but I don't try to run from them. You know, if I do, I know that it'll lead me right back to my acting out.
Another major trigger is resentment. While also a feeling, resentment warrants its own place as a significant trigger. It was Bill W., one of the two co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, who once wrote, "Resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else." Resentments are like burrs under a saddle blanket, and if you don't get rid of them, they're going to cause an infection.
When I used to talk to my ex on the phone, and she would turn on me, I would invariably get upset, and then when I hung up, I'd have a couple of drinks. I don't call her anymore.
High risk is another significant trigger. You need to identify people, places, and situations that are high risk. Being back in control, being your own God, is the next trigger. With a little bit of time, clean and sober, you often begin to feel better. And while initially so grateful that others are there to help you, it now becomes easier to start to reject what it is they think or suggest. Old tapes begin to play, and soon you're back in control.
Some old friends invited me to a party. It was great to hear from the woman who called. Her voice reminded me of some really good times. But I knew enough, and I called my sponsor, and she told me to avoid the party and get to a meeting. Well, I thought she could have been a little less blunt with me, and I went to the party anyway. I knew what I was doing. I was doing great with my program. Well, when I got to the party, everybody was so happy to see me, and all looked as if they were doing great. But they were all using, and they just expected me to use too. They didn't know I'd been to treatment and was trying to stay clean. Well, just then I found myself thinking, maybe this time, just once, no one would have to know.